So many of you know that my wife and I are avid cyclists and bike racers. In previous speeches, I've shared some of the details on the training and preparation that goes into riding thousands of miles per year. In addition to the physical preparation, all the hours on the bike, strength training, as I get older, lots of stretching, lots of rolling, I also have to do one other thing. I have to eat a lot. Now, some of you may think this is a high-quality problem to have. It gives me an excuse to eat pizza and hamburgers and drink lots of beer. But unfortunately, that's not the case. A big challenge for me is how to eat right. So I break this down into two areas of focus. The first area is how to choose the right mix of foods, the right balance of carbs, proteins, and fats based on my activity level. And the second area of focus is, once I've figured out the mix of foods, is how to source that food appropriately. How to choose foods that's safe for me and is produced in a way that has minimal impact on the environment. Fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, this second area is what I'm going to focus on today because it applies to each and every one of you. I'm going to talk about why you should consider organic, GMO-free, locally sourced food. First, let's start with organic. Organic crops are crops that are raised without the use of synthetic pesticides, without GMOs, without petroleum-based fertilizers, and without sewage sludge-based fertilizers. Organic livestock can't be given any antibiotics, can't be fed any animal byproducts, and can't be given any growth hormones. They have to have access to the outdoors and be given room to move around. There's lots of benefits to organic food. First, organic crops don't contain the pesticide residues that traditional crops contain. Those residues can be carcinogenic to people. Also, organic foods typically are fresher because they don't contain preservatives, and as a result, they're picked closer to when they're in season. Organic farming is just overall better for the environment. Organic farmers tend to practice soil and water conservation techniques. They tend to use less energy and just overall pollute less. Organic farms are also better for the surrounding wildlife. Some of you may remember that about a year or so ago I gave a speech on how our bee populations across the world are being decimated. One of the main culprits is thought to be pesticide usage, so organic farms are better for our bees. Organically raised animals have less risk of contracting mad cow disease because they're not fed animal byproducts. They have less risk of developing antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria because they're not given antibiotics. And overall, they just have a better quality of life because they're given more room to move around and they have access to the outdoors. There was a study done last year in Europe that showed that organic meat and dairy products are 50% higher in omega-3 fatty acids. And finally, organic foods are GMO-free, which is a good segue into my next topic, GMOs. GMOs are genetically modified organisms. These are plants that have had their DNA altered in a way that can't happen in nature, nor can't happen via traditional crossbreeding. The reason for doing this is to make those plants resistant to herbicides or to make them develop their own insecticide. A good example of this is corn. Virtually all of the corn in the United States is GMO, genetically modified. And the reason for doing this is to make it resistant to a herbicide called Roundup. And the reason that farmers want to make it resistant to Roundup is so they can spray their entire field with Roundup so it kills all the vegetation except the corn. So the big question is whether GMOs are safe or not. It's a very controversial topic. The USDA, the FDA, the seed manufacturers all say that GMOs are safe. Critics are quick to point out that there haven't been any long-term studies. We do know that the use of Roundup has increased 15 times since GMOs were introduced. And Roundup's a pesticide that can have those carcinogenic properties. Also, there's been studies that have shown that short-term studies that have shown that there are potential health impacts for genetically modified foods. There's also potentially increased risk of food allergies as well. Finally, I want to talk about the benefits of locally grown food. This is food that is sourced in your town, your region, in your state, somewhere close by. There's several benefits. First of all, there's financial benefits. The money that you spend on your food stays in your environment. It stays within your local economy. It goes to your local farmers. Also, there's transportation-related benefits. Today, each meal you eat travels 1,500 miles from where it's grown when it ends up on your dinner plate. So buying food locally means there's less environmental impact from transportation. Also, the food tends to be riper because or fresher because it can be picked closer to when it's ripe. There's several ways to buy local. First, you could buy it at your food at your local grocery store. I noticed this past summer that my grocery store was labeling food that was locally produced. Also, you could participate or visit a farmer's market like the one that they have in Hartford in the summer. Or you could participate in what's called a CSA. A CSA is Community Supported Agriculture. And the idea behind a CSA is that you buy a share of a farmer's crop in advance of the season. And then each week during the season, you go pick up the share of that crop. And it can differ depending on what's in season at any given point in time. Connecticut has a lot of CSAs, so if you're interested in participating in one, I'd recommend Googling Connecticut CSA and you can pull up a list of the different ones in your area. In closing, even if you're not riding your bike thousands of miles per year or training for a marathon, choosing the right foods can benefit you. I recommend, next time you're in the grocery store, choosing organic, GMO-free, locally sourced food.